because it's pulsed DC, so there's some relativistic stuff going on. There's like some interaction, but basically your field lines are on the side there, so you're providing a negative pressure on the sidewall instead of a static pressure against the other plate. So the idea was you have an unequal force on the two plates. And there were other ways to explain this. But yeah, so when you pulse this thing with relativistic effects, then all of these things, all of this flat plate is roughly affected all at the same time, and then the effect kind of washes over the other side. So there's this non-reciprocal force apparently that comes out of this. But
so are you
we
pushing against the plate in that case?
Ourselves, I think we've been talking to one guy who has been able to supposedly replicate this. I think he's got an ionocraft. I don't know yet though, so I want to replicate it myself first, but we have other projects that are more pressing.
Yeah, what is the stuff that you guys are working on most pressingly right now?
Again, energy. I mean, as long as we have so the thing I was going to mention a little bit earlier was, it's kind of funny that everyone wants to get to space and they think that's going to be the easy way out, but then when you talk to people about how about figuring out how to actually live sustainably, you don't need warp drive, you don't need crazy amounts of antimatter or anything. You just need good old-fashioned engineering and ingenuity. And everyone's like, no, that's no longer possible. Like, no, there's ways. I think, and we can live more sustainably with the world we have here. But anyway,
so what's the energy stuff that you guys been working on?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. What's that?
I said, what's the energy stuff that you guys
like the specific projects?
Yeah, like the specific projects.
Oh, there's all sorts of things. Most of these are thermal recyclers, like I was talking about. A few of the ones that are on the web are, Daniel Sheehan here. He's got a whole bunch of examples over at the University of San Diego. If you want to look through his research, he has 2, 3, maybe 4 different example systems now that all do this. With some replications in other labs. We're trying to replicate one of his systems. We're like halfway there. We're getting we have this device with a persistent pH gradient, and now we're trying to take that pH gradient and turn that into electricity. And it's not easy. I think we have the wrong electrode materials or catalysts or something. But at the very least, we can verify that this pH gradient is persistent, even when you carve a flowback channel for equilibration in the thing. So that's interesting. But what was? Oh yeah, and then the other main one that I've seen is the graphene energy harvester from the University of Arkansas. Paul Tabata worked on that one. And there's also on YouTube, I think it's a now defunct conference, but they ran for a few years. And actually Stephen Wolfram attended, which was pretty cool. It's called The Unlab on YouTube. Jeremy, put that one up, The Unlab. Maybe the YouTube page, if you can find it, because I don't know what the deal is with okay, it's still, that's the right logo, I think. Oh, hey, it's an MIT lab. I didn't know. That's good. All right, so that explains why Wolfram went, because he's nearby.
And do you know what it was about?
Yeah, what's their project?
Well, the Unlab talks about all sorts of bleeding edge physics stuff. So, all of these thermal recyclers. Some people claiming vacuum energy conversion. There's a few ways of conceivably doing that as well, actually. I mentioned, well, at least online, I've mentioned in the past parametric effects and stuff. Well, there was this one guy with a very clever idea where if you have a transistor on one side and you have a Casimir plate levitated on a spring, then the Casimir force depends on these plates being conductive. But if on one side you have this transistor-like thing, so you can change its conductivity, you can change it from conducting to insulating, then you can change the Casimir force between the plates by switching the transistor on and off. And if the energy it takes to switch the transistor is less than the energy, this potential energy in that change in the Casimir effect, then in principle you can use that to tap vacuum energy. Lots of cool ideas.
Why would there be a delta? Is it a delta G?
It's just because the Casimir engine is somehow harvesting the background.
Well, that's the claim. I don't know about that, but what I do know is if you have two conducting plates and you can switch one from conducting to insulating, then the Casimir force between those plates should change, and therefore their equilibrium spacing, if one is attached by a spring, will change. And then if you switch the thing back, then you just repeat that cycle. And the switching of the conductivity to insulating state of the transistor will not depend on the position of the other plate, as far as I know.
Do we have a good sense of why the Casimir effect works?
Yeah. It's you have a boundary condition on vacuum fluctuations, so only certain vacuum fluctuations can exist in that gap because you have the two conducting plates. So those conducting plates will screen out any other, like they'll dampen out any other waves that aren't lambda over, what was it?
It's like phase cancellation, I suppose. We had this dude from University of Plymouth on our show, Michael McCullough. Yeah, he's building.
Oh yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he's building. I guess he's having some success building, proof of concept versions of these Casimir.
Yeah, his stuff went dark, right?
Oh yeah.
He got like he's got well, for a while I think. Now they have a company. Jeremy, did you have a link to that company still? I forget the name. Oh yeah, Mike McCulloch, he had this device with some spinning discs, and he had this theory that if you spin these things fast enough, then their Rindler horizons or something like that are near enough that you can push off of those information horizons or something along those lines. But yeah, I heard from Jeremy recently. Apparently, they've got a company and they're testing something in space now.
I think that they've been working on that, for a while. McCullough also just he published a book of fiction. He just published a big paper. He's trying to get a job at Oxford. He's really trying to get things going for himself.
That's nice. I mean, yeah.
Go ahead.
With all he has a good idea, and I think it sounds like he got positive results, and with that came a lot of funding and probably some NDAs. Sadly.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I'm still trying to piece together. So it's like the Casimir. How do the plates shields?
Have you guys seen this yet?
Jeremy, if I may. So imagine if you have a plate, if you have a wavelength that's not equal to the distance between the plates, or some multiple
show up in between the plates because it's a quantum.
Well, yeah. Imagine it's like halfway through a plate.
Yeah.
And there's going to be an electrical eddy current in the plate because the plate's conductive that dampens out that wave until it's not. So you can only have nodes at the edge stably. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, yeah. Jeremy, what were you trying to show?
Oh, that was the company that's launching Mike McCulloch's test drive. So I don't know if this is Mike McCulloch or Roger Scheuer, because Roger Scheuer was doing a bunch of stuff with this, and I just thought that was it's very similar, but I watch it. I know Mike McCulloch shared it, so but is this the M drive? Is that? But this is a different system, I believe, but they're testing the principles of quantized inertia with this system, and apparently they did exhaustive testing on this thing on the ground already, and they're ready to put it in space. Yeah, this is the key part right here. So I'm gonna put the
Oh, it's
volume.
muted.
Let me actually, I gotta share the volume. Let me pull it out and then reshare it. Oh, Bernie's here too, by the way. He's somewhere in the background there.
Good timing, because I got to get going. Actually, I'm trying to get my sleep schedule back to normal. So
good on you, Perrone. I struggle with that every day. And I just wanted, before you go, excellent points on we need to figure out energy here and sustainable living. It's just so ridiculous to be like, oh, let's get to space where it's so uninhabitable, and without unlimited energy, you're pretty much screwed. As opposed to, let's make it happen on Earth first, and sustainable living.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you don't think you want to live like under the ice cap in Antarctica in a little dome, then how do you think you're going to live in space any better than that?
That's a fair point.
It's true, man. And then all this work we're doing for, what if we do create a warp drive and all we're doing is giving it to the people who are just going to use it for war and haven't fixed the problems on this planet first. So
Gotta open source that shit.
Yeah. Heck
Well,
yeah.
Apex all about
stuff at least.
A chicken in every pot, a warp drive in every garage. That's a platform.
Well,
Warp.
anyway, yeah. I mean, we need to get to sustainability. Actually, yeah. If we can achieve post scarcity, then a lot of the impetus for war goes away in the first place, because there's no scarce resources to fight over, really, at that point.
Except ideologies.
Yeah, I was like
Well,
that.
yeah. I mean, there's always that, I suppose, but I mean, through most of recent history, the big wars with major powers have been over, secular, like, oh, there's an oil pipeline here, this thing there, But anyway, yeah, at the very least, it'll help reduce conflict somewhat, and then, well, yeah, I mean, if we don't take care of our shit here first, then we're gonna just take it to space, and we may be able to get out of the gravitational field of the Earth, but we won't be able to escape our natures.
The nature field. It's true.
Yeah, the big thing in our area is those super fun sites, man. It'd be great if we could find technology to clean up all those messes that we've made instead of just being like, all right, let's go and make some other place and turn it into a shithole.
Yeah, did you see the thing Sal Pius mentioned?
Yeah.
Oh wait,
Yeah.
no, that might have been after the show. Let's maybe wait on that a little bit, because I don't know. That was in like kind of the after party thing, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't anything too crazy, but yeah.
But yeah, there's ways, there's
Let's
ways
blow
of
some
taking-
state secrets. Come on, guys. What are we doing?
Well, there's ways of taking these nuclear, like, radioactive waste and breaking them down. There's ways of doing
He
it.
mentioned it on your show, the Mossbauer effect.
Well, I mean, yeah, at least the stuff that's publicly available is, a couple of years ago, a guy named Peter Hagelstein was working at MIT in the he went to the cold fusion conference, and he was reporting on Mossbauer effect coupling to induce cold fusion. So the idea here is the Mossbauer effect is, yeah, I guess, Jeremy, we can talk about what's publicly available. Why not? The Mossbauer effect is basically, if you have a gamma ray that's coming in, it hits an atom, the atom's going to go flying because of the momentum of the gamma ray. So if you have an atom that's in a material lattice, then that same kinetic energy, instead of going into that single particle, will spread throughout the crystal lattice. So you have a coupling between this very high energy gamma ray and phonons in the lattice, thermal phonons in the lattice. And I mean, you can see this in many ways. So there's a gamma spectrum of various materials, like some of the isotopes of iron. And this gamma spectrum, if you heat stuff up, you get line broadening and all sorts of effects like this. But what Peter Hagelstein showed in an experiment a couple of years ago was that you could have nuclear excitation transfer between atoms of tantalum. So nuclear excitation transfer is where you have a nuclear excited state, typically in this case called a nuclear isomer. That's where you have a nucleus that combines with a gamma ray and forms a metastable state that eventually decays and releases a gamma ray again. But for a while, this gamma ray is trapped in the nucleus like that. So you have this nuclear isomer, and it's an excitation in the nucleus of the atom. And if you have a population of these in a chunk of tantalum, he showed that actually these things diffuse and migrate through the tantalum as if they were jumping from nucleus to nucleus. And that can only...
Like a nuclear current.
Sorry, what?
It sounds like a nuclear equivalent of current, almost.
I mean, it's not like electrical current,
Right.
but it's certainly like electron hole pairs, like excitons. That's probably a decent way of a more decent analogy on. But so if you have this coupling, nuclear excitation transfer between nuclei, then what that implies is there must be a reciprocal thing. So you have the Mossbauer effect, where a gamma ray comes into the atom and gets trapped and releases a phonon. Then if you have nuclear excitation transfer, that means the inverse must somehow also be true. So if you have a phonon in a lattice, you can stimulate the emission of a gamma ray from a nucleus. So
Like, I'll buy it. I mean, if you have a sufficiently concentrated, focalized, right? Because it's
like the surface of the sun or something.
Well, it's just the reverse of a process, right? So if you have something that's hit by a gamma ray and it diffuses, that's
Exactly.
dissipation as opposed to concentration, which you're working up an energy gradient to produce. And so that seems
Exactly.
like it'd be a lot harder. It seems possible, right? Because they are reversible processes.
Mathematically, it was not trivial at all to show that it was a reversible process. However, all the same, it apparently is a reversible process. And what that means is, in principle, you can take like radioactive waste and figure out what Mossbauer spectra like what phonons to hit it with, and you can actually cause it to decay. And that can, I mean, I won't go any further than that.
Oh, so you're saying that instead of having to wait for its natural rate of release of gamma rays, basically just hit it once, have it just go like, poof, lose everything at once, and then it's no longer radioactive?
Yeah, pretty
Doesn't
much.
it transfer radioactivity into the container though? Because like if you have let's say you have the stuff.
Oh yeah, the radioactive output of that would be pretty intense. And that's kind of
Are we really solving something here, guys?
That's kind of probably part of the problem with, like, so that could, the worry is that could be weaponized too.
You'd have to
anything can be weaponized.
Yeah, anything can be.
It almost certainly has already been by the U.S. at least.
You'd have to find some way.
I mean, Jeremy,
they weaponized compassion.
What about
Jeremy? There's that other publicly available info.
What about thorium?
What was the hafnium controversy? That's still up, right?
The hafnium. This sounds like an Agatha Christie novel. The hafnium controversy.
Doesn't it though? Yeah, there you go. It's still on Wikipedia. They haven't taken it down. Anyway, a couple
years ago. Did you guys hear Graham Hancock on Joe Rogan the other day where they were talking about Wikipedia, and Hancock was like trying to find the words to describe what he thought about Wikipedia, and he was like, Wikipedia is an encyclopedia of lies.
Well, not in this case.
Then he referenced it like an hour later.
Actually, Jeremy, maybe put this hafnium controversy page up on like on a archive or something. Actually, maybe I'll go grab it too right now. But yeah, so basically a bunch of nations accused the U.S. of having a hafnium-based nuclear isomer weapon, which that would be terrifying if true. because it's not like it's much more subtle than nukes. You could basically shoot gamma rays through the Earth and just sterilize a whole city, and everyone would just like have no warning, and they drop dead. And it's traveling at the speed of light, so how do you like? You're not going to get any advance warning. It's going straight through the Earth. There's no faster path.
Wouldn't you also I mean, like, if the energy, how would you possibly protect yourself from the production of that kind of radiation? It seems like it would
You
just
couldn't.
sterilize you as well.
There's no warning. It travels at the speed of light.
No, I'm saying like the people who are making the weapon.
It's collimated. So you would make a laser.
I see.
You would have a. I mean, there's not.
Didn't they try this in Star Wars?
No, this isn't Star Wars. I think
That's Alderaan didn't do so well.
No, so you would effectively need a mirror for gamma rays. So that would be difficult, but not impossible to engineer because you have the Mossbauer effect already. So, but if you had a mirror for gamma rays, you could produce effectively a laser.
They can do them with X-rays with like these really low angle incidence rays. They just have a series of really low angle.
With gammas,
mirrors,
I think the only thing is beryllium.
NASA says that gamma rays cannot be reflected by mirrors.
Yeah.
Well, you can have total internal reflection in beryllium, I believe.
Interesting.
To an extent.
What's special about beryllium?
I'm not sure, actually. I've always wondered about that myself.
Yeah, it's a neutron reflector too. So.
Yeah, it's a very interesting metal, that's for sure. Very toxic too. So I don't want to play with it personally, but yeah, I mean, so if you have the Mossbauer effect, then in principle you could also make a mirror for gamma rays of specific frequencies. Maybe it's a stretch, but anyways, that was the concern a few years back, is that they had this hafnium based weapon or something.
Who they? Just like the they?
DoD.
Yeah. DoD.
Interesting.
Someone at least.
I'd be more worried about China having it. But let's say
there's Putin talking about these new weapons with new physics principles.
Oh god.
This is one of them.
God.
If there's one person who would use them, it would definitely be Putin. That dude, he's got nothing to lose.
I don't know. I think I mean
no, it's World War III.
At this point, all these leaders are crazy.
Yeah, but they're all working together behind the scenes at the end of the day to clear out their arsenals and sell more tanks.
Right? Like Russia's still providing 3/4 of the oil to the Ukrainian army.
Is that true?
Really?
Yep.
That's wild.
What a deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, why is beryllium so anomalous? Like, I'm looking at it, it's not a huge element. It's just
it forms polymers, you know. It can make polymers, unlike most metals.
It's a weird one. Is it an S shell metal too?
It's an S shell metal. Is that unusual?
So it's kind of strange.
That is very unusual.
This is like, isn't the beryllium the stuff that they made beryllium powder, and if you breathe it in, it's like instant cancer, and that's what tons of people there was like someone that researched it, and then all those people who were researching it died of beryllium poisoning and cancer.
If you're not willing to die for chemical poisoning in the name of science, are you really even a true scientist?
Yeah, Mary Curie.
That's what I'm saying.
She got 2 Nobel Prizes.
Right.
Mary Curie's notes are still radioactive.
Wow.
I think actually, honestly, a good degree of caution. I mean, I'd rather live to see another day and do more science. You know.
Yeah.
When given the option.
Well, anyway, I do have to get to bed. I don't want to mess up my sleep schedule again. I just got it back on track. So.
All right.
But very nice to meet you both.
Yeah, it's nice talking to you, man. Have a good night.
Get some rest.
Thanks for being here, Mike. Can we go into thorium a little bit? Because, isn't it like a cleaner alternative to unlimited nuclear power?
I think it's less prone to these runaway reactions.
Is that it? Oh, and you can also there's a huge amount of thorium in salt water.
Yeah, it's in the ocean, I think, is the good news.
Yeah, I have a guy who's like all about the thorium stuff. I gotta have him come on. I forget his name. a whole list of, but this is Demystifying Science's show. So I really
Demystify
want
Sci.
Demystified Sci. Yeah. Do you guys?
We're open to other names as well. Like
Yeah, we just can't use Demystifying Science. It's been stripped from us.
it has been.
And let's talk about this. So you guys got a whole bunch of really great. I watched the most recent one too with these two economics guys that should have won the Nobel Prize for economics, but they give it to the 1%, the people who defend the 1% instead. That was epic.
Yeah, those guys are badass.
Yeah, those dudes are absolutely incredible, man. And you know what? Like if we ever like do create free energy or anti-gravity and the you know, Sweden calls me in the middle of the night to tell me I won that prize, I'm going to tell them to shove it up Henry Kissinger's ass.
Did you win one as well, or is that just do you just not like Kissinger?
Oh yeah, well he won as well. He won the Nobel Peace Prize. So like basically, yeah, if he can win the Nobel Peace Prize, and these 1%er economists are winning these prizes, like yeah, I'm all set with that with that prize and whatever it means. It doesn't mean anything to me.
I mean, what's really cool about Mike Hudson is he's gone back into like deep ancient history and looked at the successful economies and looked at what people did in order to not, you know, drive their populations into privation and strip.
Yeah, it's just crazy what's going on right now. But these guys nailed it. They hit it so hard. They hit the nail on the head, like with that explanation, man. They explained so many of these terms, like I don't even know. I have to write them all down in vocabulary. It sounds like something you should teach to every high school student in America and have them like write these vocabulary terms down and take a test.
I think most people just don't understand how much unearned income contributes to the main market, this GDP business that everybody talks about. The economy is doing great. The GDP is up, but it's like, it's really just this financial sector siphoning off all the wealth from the normal people. And they count that as growth economically, but it's really driving us into privation. Like it's really, really hurting. But you can't see that in this marker. And so
and
it's a really Weasley tactic.
Bidenomics.
I mean, it's old. This is old, way older than
I know it's older than that.
Babylonian almost.
Oh no. But that was great. When did you guys switch over? Because I remember I did an interview with you a long time ago and you were using the Muppets.
Right? Okay, I was thinking that. I was like, her voice sounds so much like her. It must be.
Yes. Yes.
It was too hard to make, like, we couldn't make eye contact with people. It was really hard to connect. And
we were not puppeteers. I think that was
we had homemade puppets. And
I thought you guys did great.
I really
it also hurt.
That. I remember we talked to you, didn't we? Like we had like a whole thing. You like showed us around your lab and all the like alchemical stuff you were trying to do with
Yes,
silver.
ma'am. Very true. I was with you. I do recall. It was good. Good to see you guys again, and looking very professional, by the way.
I wish I had a tie.
More human, at least.
Yes.
It was
when was that?
Alien scientists that were alien puppets, correct?
2 years.
Yeah, I think there's still a few videos on this. This is a brand new channel, actually. Well, not brand new, but new since then. I think we have a couple of those puppeting videos at the beginning of this channel.
Mickey and Quinn. That was it.
There it is.
There it is. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's why you got to have content. What happened to the old channel? You didn't have the continuity. You just got to keep one channel and just got to plug away at it and keep away at it. You know what? I took a huge break in like 2014 and I didn't do any videos for like a while. And that was like the time of massive growth for YouTube. And I'm like, man, I'd be like one of the huge channels now if I like didn't go away for those key years. And I just stuck with it. But
you came back once they were shadow banned or shadow banning.
And they like really abridged access to a lot of topics. And I was looking through your videos and I was like, man, I wonder if you made those videos today. I bet that YouTube just wouldn't feed them to anyone.
Yeah. They don't. Like a lot of them are hard to find. You won't find them in the searches. Like you can search the exact name and all the titles and it will still be on like you'll have to go to page 100 to find it. It shows like they really messed with the algorithm and stuff and broken a lot of the smaller channels and whatnot. But this is yeah, this is just a treasure trove of great great guests and stuff. And I do like the more professional podcasts, although that was fun with the aliens. It's definitely yeah, easier to connect with you guys as humans.
It just gave it a weird vibe because everybody thought it was a children's show, and so we'd have these people that were working on really complex science, and they would show up and they would think that they were having like PBS Storytime or Sesame Street or something.
That's fair. That's
Yeah, I
And
could
so you
I
always
think it was hardest on the guests, and it was very difficult to try to find new guests and try to break their hearts with the fact that we were going to be puppets, and it just wasn't worth it.
And I just remember Pierre Marie, who's basically our science dad at this point, sat us down. We had him on for I think 8 hours, and we talked to him, and he told us everything about solar physics. And then afterwards, he called us, and he was like, "You have to stop the puppets. Like, you can't keep doing this."
Yeah.
You're like, if you were deformed, I could understand, but you guys aren't deformed.
they're good-looking people, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. No.
I've got another name though for your podcast. If you do want to change it, you could say The Science Between Two Ferns.
Are these ferns? I guess so.
Palms, technically, we actually debated for a long time if we should
guess
do the
they are.
palms because they were so it could be seen as derivative, but they were the only plants available at Home Depot.
I do love that show, though, for what it's worth.
Sure, yeah.
We cannot rival it.
We actually we have to
Rival it on a
constantly rotate
science
them out.
sense.
What was that?
I mean, yeah, it's funny because maybe we thought about calling our show Science Dicks because we just bring on physicists and pick on them or something. I guess that would be closer to Between Two Ferns.
Yeah, it's Sesame Street for physics.
But aggressive.
Yes, aggressive Sesame Street physics.
Well, Salvatore wants to start what we dubbed mixed mental arts, MMA physics, right?
Yep.
So that would be a good podcast as well. Since I showed you guys around my lab before, I want to just give you a little bit of alchemical discoveries I've since made with my monoatomic gold that's white. When I put it out in the sun, it now turned purple. And I found also that while making monoatomic gold with a pure 24 karat gold anode, pure 24 karat cathode, that it'll make the white monoatomic during the day when the sun is out, but as soon as the sun set, it starts putting black goo out instead of the white monoatomic. And the ancient alchemists tied gold to the sun, so it's like here seems to be this physical attribute with it. And then last time I think I mentioned with the monoatomic silver, it seems that the production rate of it from pure silver cathode, pure silver anode, the amount of monoatomics being produced was tied to the moon cycle. When the moon's waxing and waning, it barely makes any. When the moon is full moon, it makes a bunch. And the couple times I've had it during a super moon, it literally filled the bucket full of this monoatomic stuff. And I went so far as last year with Jeremy on his AlienScientist channel during the eclipse, we did some experiments, and I set up the monoatomic silver where before the eclipse it was making a whole bunch, and then as the eclipse happened, it stopped making any live on your channel, and then it continued once the eclipse was over. So very, very fascinating, these energies and what the ancients tied to it.
Yeah, I know gold's a good monatomic gold's a good absorber in the IR. They have to use it to make black bodies if they want to do IR spectrum black bodies. So I wonder if it's something up there in the upper wavelengths that you're seeing in that reaction.
Could it be UV?
No, that's low, right? That's low wavelength or tiny wavelength. I'm talking about big long ones.
Sure, but like UV would give you a lot of energy because so monatomic substances are like fully dispersed in solution, so you have to break them off the lattice.
I was just talking about, Pierre was literally just texting me yesterday about how he was like, there's something really interesting here with gold, like in terms of he thinks that it has to do with the protons in the black body contributing to the black body spectrum, because you're making these heavy elements are necessary in order to cover the full basis of the black body spectrum in the upper wavelengths, essentially. I don't know, it's beyond my pay grade, but it's something to consider.
But like if you're seeing differences in the way that the
moon's beyond, I have no freaking idea how that's involved.
But the moon bounces sunlight.
It does.
Wouldn't you expect there to be, and the strongest component of sunlight is UV, isn't it? Or is that not right?
I don't think so. No, I'd imagine it's yeah, I would imagine it's less.
Really?
Right, so demystifying size, I had to bring it up because this is straight mystery, and then you bring in the fact that like there's the woman's menstrual cycle tied to the moon. You have any doctor, ER person will tell you that lunatics come out on a full moon, and that there seems to be these some sort of bigger power energies coming from the celestial bodies somehow.
Well, that's definitely got to be linked. I mean, there's cycles that are happening that are pushing and pulling people around. I wouldn't be surprised, right? Because it's like you're affected electromagnetically and gravitationally by the planets.
You know, like one of the smartest physicists I've talked to believes in astrology, and I'm like, how does this make any sense? And but if you think about maybe if like the alignment of the planets could kind of cause certain kind of cycles and stuff with
Right. Well, from physics point of view, they are the largest masses in our physical realm acting on each other with their gravity and the EM fields that, if it's tied to bioenergy somehow, that it would make sense, I guess.
Does the
I mean,
Earth's
the problem
magnetic
is that like
fields-
something even like Jupiter, like by far the most massive body in the solar system, like more massive than all the rest of them put together other than the sun. But you got to think gravity falls off with an inverse square. So the effect, like if you were standing on the surface, well, the Jupiter doesn't really have a surface, but you're standing on the surface of it, it'd be like crushing gravity. But the effect of that gravity on us here on Earth is like, I don't want to put a number out, but I think it's something like 1/60,000th or something. It's like an incredibly low force, basically.
Question about that. What about the moons of Jupiter? If you're standing on a moon of Jupiter, how much does the gravity of Jupiter affect you from the moon?
That's a good question. I mean, they're still spherical, right? Like they're not being like totally elongated by it, so it can't be too.
Wouldn't you be in free fall though? Because technically the moon's falling, so I don't know. But it's gonna have, but it also, like imagine if you had oceans on the moon, would they have tides? And would those tides be even more like strong? Because I mean, they're affected by Earth, the gravity. It's way bigger.
Well, is Io Saturn or Jupiter?
Yeah, I was gonna say Io's kind of. I think that's what Io is all about, right? Because it's got all this magma that's getting squished out of it by the tides, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Crazy volcanoes and like, I think it's volcanoes are like amplifying the magnetic field. There's like this entirely wild system of feedback going on.
If we
Io is very alive.
Academia to apply some real quantum physics to this horoscope astrology business, we'll have Schrodinger's horoscope. Man, yes.
I'm trying to figure out if there's any effect of the lunar cycle or the solar cycle on the Schumann resonance or on the Earth's magnetic field, because those are probably the only two ways that I can imagine there being something that's transduced. Because I know that we had this lady on the show who was talking about quantum biology, and she was talking about this guy who builds really good Faraday cages, and he has a lab in France, and he's discovered that if you put tadpoles inside of a Faraday cage that cancels the Earth's magnetic field, they develop weirdly. They're mutated. So you have to have the proper magnetic field in order for the embryos to be able to actually move into the right position and to actually form the tadpoles without their heads and stuff being in the wrong place. And so if that kind of a small absence or presence is necessary, then you can imagine that a small variation in just ambient conditions would generate.
I can imagine all the stars. I can imagine all the planets affecting the sun in some way too.
Not good on the Wi-Fi front.
All right.
No, he was asking like if that's the case, how's Wi-Fi affecting us? And I was like,
not good.
Yeah. What were you trying to say then?
I was just saying that I could imagine the resonance of the planets, like the alignment of the planets affecting the sun, in particular its magnetic field, and so the solar wind, and so all the downstream effects of that on our own lives here. I don't know. I'm always looking for this. It's funny because like I teach this basic intro astronomy class at the university, and the textbook uses astrology as this like demon of anti-science, and it's really interesting to go through that with people because a lot of people believe in, more people I would say believe in astrology than believe in science. It's like a really popular thing, especially throughout history. But
But it's like I've experienced this where I can like pick up these random astrology books that were written like 50 years before I was born. And it's like you flip to like your exact date and stuff and like the whole alignment. It's like, how the heck is this thing defining me? And then it's like it becomes pretty hard to not believe in it in some way when the majority of the time they seem accurate.
I guess like one of the other punching bags is that the astrology calendars were set up 2,000 years ago or 3,000, 4,000 years ago. And so the stars are actually, like the pole star, for instance, has moved a little bit. So all the stars are like not quite right, just due to the precession of the Earth. And so you're not really in the astrological sign that your chart says that you're
You're in the wrong house.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, they're written to be sufficiently generic that they apply, right? It's like this is how mediums. Jeremy, what is
that's
the
true
thing that
too.
you're showing?
Oh, I don't know. It's I found a Schumann resonance generator on eBay. It just looks
Yeah,
like
that's what the Schumann antenna looks like. That's the geometry of it. And then you see some of these ancient drawings that literally look like they have these Schumann generators on them. It's crazy. And then they're built into floors, the mosaics of floors in lots of cathedrals as well.
Oh man, when you were talking about the gold, I was thinking about the cap on the Egyptian pyramids too. We had this dude that he presented this really out there theory, and it sounded like almost too out there for us to even entertain, but it turned out to be really compelling that there was this industrial chemistry going on inside of the pyramid, that the structure of the chambers was basically more appropriate to industrial chemical manufacture than anything else. And they were basically doing the Haber-Bosch process of making ammonium fertilizer and all of the downstream chemicals that result
And he goes
from that.
through it, and he's like, they've literally never found a body inside the Great Pyramid.
He's like, that's not a sarcophagus, that's a vat for chemicals. But it's like, it was such a compelling presentation, actually. That's one of the podcasts. I don't know what number it is, but you guys should check it out.
Jared, what was his name? Jeremy?
Yeah, we should look it up.
It was really funny because Shiloh booked this, and he tells me as we're going into it, he's like, hey, we have this guy who's studying the pyramids and about how they were producing massive quantities of industrial chemicals in the pyramids. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, like this is
interesting because then like I remember I read one of the books I read a long time ago is Christopher Dunn, the Giza power plant, and
we have him coming like next week.
Oh, I just remember this guy's channel. It's called Land of Chem. Check it out on YouTube. Yeah, Land of Chem.
Yeah, he wouldn't do my podcast. I don't know what's going on with that. But
Christopher Dunn?
He went on Danny Jones recently, and so yeah, he had this whole theory in his book that there's the Queen's chamber was like they took like grape juice and something else, and it turned into hydrogen gas, and that the hydrogen gas would rise up into the King's chamber, and that the King's chamber had this resonance hall of the Helmholtz resonators inside the Grand Gallery right here. That would create these microwaves or sound waves that would vibrate inside a resonance chamber inside the King's tomb, and that this resonance of the hydrogen gas inside that chamber was somehow a fusion reactor. But then I don't know how they get the power out or where it went from
arc, the missing arc that fits perfectly into the box in the King's chamber. And I've been talking about this, that Egypt, because originally it was Chem, the land of Chem. They renamed it, and it's like Egypt. They've been gypped out of the energy. It was stolen by Akhenaten or Moses when he took the ark from it, which fit in and was the giant capacitor box. And John Hutchinson has made the replication of it in Japan. I think it was like 10, 20 years ago. And like they were getting mad power out of this ark that they replicated.
Interesting. I mean, God knows how old that thing is, right? It's like, how do you even date a bunch of rock? What's the does anybody know the standard way that they give the pyramids their date?
They find wood.
You find wood
They find wood that's like buried in the pyramids
from the
themselves.
So they
construction.
date it by the kings that they claim, or the pharaohs they claim that were buried in it, right?
There's a king list, but in addition to the king list, they also have radiocarbon dated wood that they believe was used as scaffolding in the construction.
Mm.
And so somebody made the really good point the other day where they were like, what stops people from just digging up the pyramids another 10,000 years from now and finding, a dead camel or something next to
Exactly.
it?
Plastic.
Right? Exactly. Like they probably did renos at that time, and it was the resurgent Egyptians, or like the I forget what the newer dynasty, or like the most recent dynasty, that then like went in after this cataclysm, found it, renovated it, chiseled their own stuff into it, and then reused it. But the original builders most likely more advanced from this pre-cataclysm time.
Dude, did you see this pyramid they found in Indonesia? It's like 20,000
Yeah.
years old or something.
Gunung Padang.
Yes, that's what it is called.
What the heck is going on there?
Before we move on from the idea of dating, I think that we should have more of a troll mindset, and we should just start to build false monuments, and just like build shit and
Like a fake pyramid?
Yeah, like or
Like Vegas.
intentionally fill the pyramids with artifacts that are anomalous, so that 10,000 years from now, when they do excavate it, they're like, "What the fuck is happening?"
Right? I like that. Kind of like a Crespi collection.
We spend a lot of time being like really dainty about, how are we going to leave things for our descendants to discover so that we maintain our wisdom. And I'm like, why don't we just accept fear, uncertainty, and doubt and sow it through the ages?
Well, so one part that I have an issue with of them being like, oh, we were just hunter-gatherer, right? There's just evidence of hunter-gathering, but it's like, well, like you say, 10,000 years from now, all our cities are on the coast pretty much, get wiped out by something. Right now, we still have indigenous tribes that don't have contact with modern civilization, that are still hunters and gatherers, that are just out there doing that. And that's like what you would probably find most in the land remaining if the oceans have gone up even more and all of our cities are underwater out there somewhere, right?
Yeah, and you got to think about like what are the stories those people would tell about all this shit that's happening right now? Like, what would that look like in an oral tradition 10,000 years later?
Because I don't think there's any tribes that are like full stop uncontacted, right? Like,
I mean, they probably see airplanes flying over at least, right? Like, they probably have some sense that
Like,
there's
what is that dragon in the sky?
we had this really crazy experience where like out near Joshua Tree or San Diego somewhere, and this airplane flew over. We were just like hiking in the woods, and all of the coyotes started howling at once as the airplane flew over. And it was like, what the hell are they thinking? Like, what does this mean to them? They clearly
pretty
wanted to
cool,
communicate with it.
That's a fascinating experience.
I formulated an entire theory on the back of it that like mythology actually runs much deeper than humans, and all of the most fundamental stories that we have began when we were still animals, but I have no proof of that.
I feel like that's kind of what we're doing with the UFOs. We're sort of just like the coyotes howling at these things, like no real basis for understanding what the hell they are, but try to put these stories on them anyways.
Well, when it comes to that aspect and like just intelligence, one thing that always baffled me was I had a couple of little chameleons, and I was feeding them crickets, and like these crickets like burrowed into the moss, and then I put in a couple of waxworms, and when a waxworm dropped, these crickets popped up on different sides of the tank, chirped at each other, and went in together and pack attacked, killed, and ate the waxworm.
Damn.
And it's like, how were these little bugs intelligent enough to communicate and then pack, hunt, and attack something, right? Like we claim like, oh, a golf ball sized brain, you couldn't think of anything, but yet these little crickets with a pin prick of the size of a brain were able to do that.
Yeah, we don't have good systems for being able to understand how organisms that don't have complex brains can do stuff. And so you see people all the time being like, well, they're just not conscious, which is kind of what they also do for early humans too, right? They're like, well, they couldn't have thought things.
You know, some guy on our podcast said like he didn't think his cat was conscious. You're like, what? Really? You don't have a very good relationship with your cat, dude.
Right?
I think it's just kind of an ill-defined term, though. It's like, what the hell do you mean by consciousness and everything? And I think most people probably mean something like self-consciousness, which, you know, I don't know that the crickets are grooming themselves in the mirror and stuff.
Oh, there was a study that I found the other day that like they're doing brain scans of like chickens and rats, and they're showing that rats can think about things that aren't in front of them. Like they can think about places where they've been, and chickens can think about places where they've been, which starts to challenge the very idea that they can't.
How?
How are they doing the
Yeah.
experiments? Probably a really bullshit method like fMRI or something.
I don't know how you know what a cricket's thinking or a rat. I mean,
Right, but like even dogs though, like my pet dog in the middle of the night, it's like dreaming, it's like yipping, it's barking, it's like trying to run in its sleep, like, you know, it's
for
conscious dreaming. Like it's got a subconscious clearly then as well.
Yeah. So I'm looking at this this Gunung Padang press release. And so they finally radiocarbon dated it, and they found that the older parts of the structure are between 25,000 and 14,000 years old.
That's amazing. And
that's like
didn't
during
they
the
also
Bronze Age.
find like a working energy something, like some sort of working energy signature still inside the cavity in the very center of it? I believe Graham Hancock doing something on.
I don't know. Jeremy, do you know anything about this? I'm trying to figure it out.
Jeremy, you're muted if you were trying to talk, brother.
There's
No, sorry, I hadn't heard about it. This was so sorry, I was reading comments and stuff. So just
Where's this at, by the way? Is this
Indonesia.
Indonesia?
Yeah, it's on.
I mean,
like,
what's
the
crazy is
northern
it
tip.
kind of sits right between. So we have all these pyramids in Mesoamerica, all these pyramids in Egypt and Sumeria, and then
Also Asia though, China, Korea.
Sure, yeah. I don't know if you guys saw this. We had this dude from UCLA, this archaeologist, who was investigating this site in China, and it had this unbelievable artwork that was like very, very Aztec Mayan looking, but it was apparently dated to something like 1,000 years before the Aztecs and Mayans were making this same artwork. But it was very, very strange in terms of like a potential missing link between those two cultures, and he wasn't totally opposed to that idea. He wasn't willing to, you know, you know how academics are, like you can't prove it, but it really, really looks like a Mesoamerican facade just in the middle of China from 1,000 years too early. Very, very interesting.
That actually kind of corresponds to a podcast I did last night with Hans Dietrich, and he is talking about in Egypt that there's one Grand Hall, I forget where it's at, but you pay the guard and you go into this room and you're like, what's so special about this? And then he shines the flashlight onto the roof, and on the roof there's this giant Mayan Aztec like painting and relief on it, and that Maya in Egyptian means ocean. So like Maya crossed the ocean, well, you would have the Maya people there.
Wild. Yeah, there's a lot of shared symbolism too between the Middle East, let's say, and the Mesoamericans. There's like the serpent god deities are similar. This handbag thing you've probably seen shows up in both places. This little basket that they're carrying around.
Handbag everywhere, right?
Handbag's crazy. Some of those comparisons side by side are just like, what is going on?
And the watch looking thing usually on the wrist of the guy holding the handbag in one, and then the pine cone thing in the other.
I know the pine cone. I don't know about the watch thing.
I haven't seen the watch. Yeah.
Oh, you never seen the watch with like the flower petals on it? It's like on all the Sumerian guys and stuff, but they've also found it now on some of the Peruvian and Bolivian ones too.
I know they got that tree of life thing. I mean, it's funny because you talk to these academics about like what the hell's going on, and they're like, well, they were licking the same toads. It's like, so they saw the same. I'm like, dude, I don't know how many toads you've licked, but I'm not seeing these like I haven't licked any toads either, but it's hard for me to believe that people are just coming up with the exact same art designs just by, you know, tripping on the same drugs. But that's the standard narrative, I guess.
Yeah. Brings up a memory of took a picture once when I was like at this famous music festival, and I like grabbed a toad and I like stuck my tongue out and I like had it from an angle where it made it look like I was licking the toad, but I definitely was not, and I posted it and everyone it was funny.
That's really funny.
Sorry, yeah.
I hear it can be quite
We're
dangerous
getting a
licking
little
toads.
fringe, so maybe we should circle back to some energy.
Yeah, don't
and
pretend to
science
lick
stuff.
toads.
And one free energy thing, sustainable, that we've been working on that we got to get back on is John Hutchinson with his wife Nancy and their crystal battery cells, and that it ties back to what Perrone was talking about and these crystal lattices and going into the cold fusion aspect, and then Salvador Payas being like, this new science needs to be on entropy, on creationism, not destroying and destruction, not exploding, but building.
Do you guys know anything about lattice confined fusion?
Yeah.
It's kind of a cool principle. NASA's very mum about it. There's one paper it's one paper and some bulletins surrounding it, but it's an ambient temperature fusion reaction, and very, very intriguing stuff where you basically just trap the fusible elements inside of some sort of, you know, neutral lattice and then squish it with a laser. And it seems pretty promising. I think from the preliminary reports, it seems maybe it's so promising that they're staying quiet about it. We tried really hard to get somebody from NASA to come and talk to us about it, but just got lost in the bureaucracy.
They're like, nope, it's at normal temperature, so we can't talk about this. Any fusion at normal temperature, no.
Yeah, it's really funny. Whenever we talk to NASA people about something they don't want to talk about, they're usually just like, hey, talk to this guy. And they like CC somebody, and then he's like, no, talk to this guy. And then they just kind of like toss us around the office, you know, until we get tired. And that's how it ends usually. So
yeah, no, don't look into anything fusion that's at normal temperatures. No, just we have to go hot fusion, trillions of dollars, and it's a decade away from now. All right, just go.
My thought about it is, I'm like, if there is a chance that low energy nuclear fusion is possible, then the government's already working on it, and they're working on it in a secret laboratory that none of us have access to. Like, nobody knew about the Manhattan Project. I don't know why we think that we would be able to know about anything that is behind the scenes high-tech government.
Except for that one Nazi spy.
A Soviet spy, I think. Was he Nazi or Soviet?
Rosenberg, yeah.
British dude.
Well, the Rosenbergs, yeah, they sold out a bunch of stuff to the Soviets, but I think that if I remember
there was that British dude in the movie Oppenheimer.
There was somebody in the Oppenheimer movie who had gotten through into the inner circle.
It's hard to keep secrets, man.
It is hard to keep secrets, but I feel like we're better than ever at keeping secrets. Everybody's so surveilled. Everybody's technology is constantly watching them.
With the smartphones of today, it's like it's hard to keep a secret for anything that's public, but if it's private, they're gonna make sure it stays private. It gets expunged, and so do you if you talk about it.
Right? Like they could just have like an underground city where they just like basically took
Cleveland, Ohio, man.
Is that
that's where those guys are at. Yeah, it's like some innocuous middle of nowhere place.
That's where the Hive is from. Oh gosh, what are those movies? Zombie ones with the Umbrella Corporation.
Well, right, Pat's out there too, right, with all of the alien autopsy business that was, you know, sort of whispered about. I don't know. Big Air Force base in Ohio, for what it's worth.
Lots of dumbs everywhere. We would be dumb not to suspect that there's some real hidden science going on in those dumbs.
That to me, it seems like most of the UFO stuff is, my instinct is government technology. And like governments have something that they're testing and it's not familiar to us. And because all of the whistleblowers that come out are mysteriously unspecific. Like nobody's really been able to offer any kind of hard evidence. Nobody has photographs. Nobody has anything that they can point to. It's all hearsay. And I'm like, if it's all hearsay, is it possible that it's just disinformation to cover for something that they're building themselves?
That's what it seems like with these Tic Tacs. And if the Ashton Forbes like case that he's presenting is true, that's what it is, 100%. And that why I give this MH370 Tic Tac videos credence is that they're the same Tic Tacs that the Pentagon has acknowledged existed with the Nimitz encounters and whatnot. So, they seem very, very similar.
Yeah, can you lay out the Ashton Forbes stuff? Because I've only really tangentially seen it, and I don't know much about it.
We're still, the thing I really want to see is, well, I want to know what kind of FLIR, thermal imaging cameras they had back in 2014. Like, obviously we have some better stuff now. So whatever we have back then, someone's got to have it or show it. He mentions like Raytheon, and there's a bunch of other companies that have developed this technology and stuff. But I'd really like to see, what does a commercial airline look like on those cameras or on those sensors? Because this is kind of like, if those videos are real, then that's sensor data from the satellites and stuff. So it's going to show us some of those things. So I'm interested to see, well, what does a Bose-Einstein condensate, or what is a superconductor? We can get some yttrium, barium, copper oxide and supercool it and see what it looks like on thermal cam, just so we can compare it to what he's saying is in those videos. Because I don't know, the videos, it's like, it's hard to say with the video alone, because I'm just not convinced. There's so much you can do with CGI and people who
Oh man, there was this crazy article that came out in Forbes magazine right around the same time that was essentially a spotlight on this defense tech that was being developed, by a contractor for the U.S. government, and they were essentially developing these heat signature holograms that they could project from satellites.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you guys can go look that up. Like, it's wild to read it, because it sounds exactly like the TikToks. Basically, they're TikToks.
Oh, so it's just like a psyop of essentially. Then
it's like maybe they were like, let's try this out on our own fleet and see, because
yeah, right.
I mentioned that, and I get all these people attack me and say they would never ever test that out on a live fleet. That's so illegal and so wrong. And I'm like, dude, they fed radioactive meals to prisoners during World War II to test the effects of radiation on soldiers.
They gave acid to like populations in the water, like.
Yeah, they sprayed bacteria on San Francisco.
Technology, bro. Of course they would test that in a live exercise. And that's the weird thing, man. Like, because I go back and forth on all this, man. I like at that interview I did with Pays last weekend was like the first moment where I'm like, what if this is really like legit? Up until then, I'm like, this might be real. I'm just like here to like investigate it and see. And I've been super skeptical. But after that, I was kind of like, man, like, what if I am like J. Robert Oppenheimer and we're trying to like tickle the dragon's tail for real, or we're like chasing the beast, man. Like, man, I thought that was it kind of just changed my mind on a lot of this stuff. But yeah, as far as all those mysteries go, I think that it's good to get more people asking questions and digging into those mysteries. And I think that there should be more official investigations into this kind of stuff that really try to get to the bottom of that. Like, is that guy Edward Lynn, Agent 370 and all that stuff? Like, is that the real guy? Is it someone else? Like, who leaked? Is that it was, what kind of capabilities do we have for, tracking errant aircraft? I mean, obviously we've had to have put something in place, like with the satellite system, and we have the Star Wars defense program. We have some, surveillance and monitoring capabilities that are not made public and well known about, but it'd be nice to know about, at least what we had in 2014, But it's crazy if you look into all the Argus stuff and the spy drones and the capabilities of these things, man. There's
another major part of that MH370 though, and 10 years ago in 2014 would have made it so much more important now with like is it NK whatever, the cold the superconductor at room
LK99.
yeah, the NK99, sorry, and that there's like all of this new stuff coming out with superconductors and whatnot, and that supposedly that airplane had 20 of the like most advanced Chinese superconductor engineers on it. That's like with the whole Diego Garcia being right there, the no mention of it, and that these crazy engineers that were supposedly on their way to China to upgrade China's factories, and that if this is that cold fusion breakthrough, these superconductors at room temperature, that would have made it this target plane to use whatever technology to either save it, take it out, or run a psyop to take the people on it.
Yeah, and it wasn't. I don't think all 20 of them. There was 4 of them that were like really, established and top scientists, and 20 total on the flight. But not all of them were like the upper level people or really high level people. But still, it caused a lot of outrage. And you're not supposed to put all your eggs in one basket at those big companies like that. And why would they do that? Is a big concern in general, because a lot of companies have not had those have practices in place. Don't put them all on the same plane. You don't. It's kind of like the president and the vice president they're never on Air Force One together. ever.
Right. Oh, just like how Prigozhin there in Russia and all of his main team, we're all on one plane. The one time it gets hit by a missile, and then they're all gone. Right, like the Wagner contract.
Oh yeah, there's nothing going on there. Right.
Right. They literally had 3 airplanes where all the bosses were supposed to be on each one, flying in the air at that time, but no, they put them all onto one plane, and just magically it explodes. Right.
There's do you guys know about this? Like, there was some plane crash in Russia where I don't know.
That's what he's talking about, the Prigozhin.
No, I'm talking about when the Polish got like half the Polish.
Oh yeah, the Polish when the former Polish president,
a bunch of people.
And whatnot died. Yeah, and then his twin brother took over or something.
It's kind of like when all those big bankers and financial people that were opposing the Federal Reserve all got on the Titanic in 1911. 2 years
when everybody investing Enron went into the Twin Towers on 9/11.
You can't write all this stuff, man. No.
I'm sure they're just coincidences. Just random walk of the universe. I don't know. I have this weird feeling sometimes where
Building 7. Sorry.
What's that? Building 7. Yeah, exactly. I touch the edge of these things, and I'm like, how does a person continue to live a normal life if you assume that these are not just coincidental things? Like, I feel like it makes it impossible to wake up in the morning and brush your teeth and go to work and work your job and do your thing.
Like, it strips you of it.
Literally where you transition into a non-player character, where you're just like, I'm going to be a zombie in the con. I don't mind being a sheep being slaughtered by the wolf at the end of the day.
I mean, it's definitely, like, that's what the whole idea of the Matrix was, right? Which is that you can look at reality and you can choose to just go back into the machine because you like your steak, and it's easier and it's better that way.
Right, and well, with the metaverse, that's kind of what it looks like they're trying to do here, and with the transhumanistic agenda and stuff. Sorry to get all conspiracy, but it seems like that's what the powers that be are trying to aim for us and try to put half the population into, and that then anybody that wants to be free or awake or like really awake to, hey, I pinprick myself, I'm bleeding and it hurts because I'm not numb. This is the reality that you'll be swarmed by these drones that are like, no, everything's fine. You're not bleeding. You're not dying. Nothing's wrong, sort of thing, right?
Okay, so do you guys know who Palmer Luckey is?
What's it, Palmer Luckey?
Yeah, Palmer Luckey. He invented the Oculus Rift, and I think that he's also I want to say that he's involved in like Palantir. Yeah, Palantir. He's the CEO of Palantir.
And who exactly is Palantir?
or no, maybe I don't think he's involved in Palantir. Okay, but anyways, Palmer Luckey invents
Oculus
the
is
Oculus
Palantir?
Rift.
No.
No, Anduril. Sorry, not Palantir. Anduril is the defense industry company that makes independent systems. But so he invented this VR headset that would let you play video games and stuff, but is programmed to explode if you die in the video game.
What?
And so he's never, I mean, obviously he's never tested it, and it's obviously kind of like a troll thing to design. But
That's
it's
kind of like the Chinese military helmet that it's like, oh, if you get captured, it explodes.
Well, is that a thing?
Oh, that's a legit thing now.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. You can't like people can't get captured, but I have this really grim vision of the future where I'm like, okay, we talked earlier about the limitations of energy and how energy is this really difficult thing to get. And
like a Hunger Games sort of video game sort of thing.
I don't know. I never watched the Hunger Games. I don't know. Maybe.
But just like a challenge, it's like y'all sign up, one person wins and get something good, the rest of you get the button pushed at the end.
Maybe. So that's one possible version. But I had this vision of basically just like people being used as computational resources for whatever AI technology or whatever computationally intensive processes have to start happening. Because if you think about what all of the technology is pushing, like Elon Musk is developing Neuralink. Neuralink allows you to record and control what's happening inside of somebody's brain. The logical endpoint of that is that you can have people who basically sell parts of their brain to use as processors in return for some kind of probably virtual
digital currency
that they can use in some kind of video game.
Oh, that's a dystopian nightmare future.
Well, like you don't have to get the implant, you know.
True, exactly.
Oh, is that the Neuralink? Oh God, that's so
sort of like how you don't have to have a phone.
Yeah.
Oh.
Is that really it? So
like, can you really not have a phone? Can you really like?
I've debated.
Can you even really not have a smartphone? Like,
I don't know.
How's that working out if you do? I don't know.
Yeah, I used to work in a lab that was developing these like neural shank technologies, and they like the year before I left, they'd gotten with a bunch of other labs, I think they got a $20 million grant from the DoD in order to develop this stuff. And like obviously Musk is hard at work on it too.
And I don't think that the teleology of those devices was a hot discussion topic in those labs.
God, no, it was incredible. It was always just like, guys, are you sure that we should be doing this? And everybody was like, shut the fuck up.
Right? Like, who signs up to be one of the test people? Like,
well, they're going to put it on people who are, spinal cord injuries, stuff like that. Like people who are desperate.
I guess so. That's right. And then I guess it is actually advancing a couple good aspects potentially.
Yeah, it's just a matter of how do you keep the bad guys away from it, especially when the bad guys are getting rich off of doing bad things.
Right.
It reminds me of that. I watched the movie recently with Robert Downey Jr. Transcendence, I think it's called. And it's about they upload his consciousness into a computer, and it makes like this AI. And the AI convinces his wife that it's still him, and gets his wife to go do all this stuff. Like basically, he makes a bunch of money in the stock market. The AI makes a ton of money in the stock market, and then finds this town and starts building this whole like structure underneath the ground and everything. And then it figures out how to like it starts giving people upgrades, but like it also installing them with like Borg software, and eventually like it's trying to create a Borg army and stuff. It's pretty interesting.
Dude, something's coming for sure. I don't know how it's gonna play
out. Like the whole Skynet thing, it's like, why the hell are we still allowing the militaries to implement AI technology in war and in military things? Like, how do we not be like, hey, let's make sure we don't design AI to kill people, because, there's not going to be this leap of, well, if it's programmed to kill people, it's going to just start killing people.
I mean, I think the trick is most people are just concerned with paying rent, right? Like, I think the average American's like $100,000 in debt right now. So it's like, who has time to stand up and worry about these kind of things? I mean, getting Americans to get out in the streets for anything seems a dwindling possibility.
Oh,
Unless
speaking
they're
of
all out on the streets because they can't afford their homes.
Yeah, that's trending.
I saw a patent somewhere which was okay, so Sony patented a device that allows viewers to skip commercials by yelling brand names at the TV.
What?
Yeah, so it's this technology that, like, when the ad comes on, you have the opportunity to end the ad. Like, let's say it's an ad for McDonald's. You have the option to end the ad early by standing up and yelling McDonald's, and then the ad stops. And your program continues.
Oh no! You're chanting in
Indoctrinating your
unison.
children to scream for McDonald's over and over.
I would just get up and scream Aflac.
Then it shocks you.
But that actually reminds me of Eric Hecker bringing up this voice to bone technology, and that also McDonald's, I guess, is like investing in both voice to bone advertising, so it like doesn't even go through your ears. They can just like broadcast the signal that like goes to your skull into your brain, and then also through dreams that it can broadcast it into your dreams and put advertisements into your dreams.
There's a Philip K. Dick story sort of about this this guy's got some sort of implants, and these ads are showing up everywhere that he goes, and he can't shut them off. It's crazy he thought of that like 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah, I think that anybody who's interested in seeing the most pulp fiction-y version of the way that these things go should read Philip K. Dick. He wrote Minority Report, he wrote Blade Runner, he wrote A Scanner Darkly. There was like an Amazon mini-series of a bunch of his short stories that were
His
they're
short
just
stories
so
are
good.
so amazing.
Yeah, it's always like these dystopian futures, like with the crazy, I remember the one you mentioned there. Sorry,
Minority Report.
Minority Report. Yeah, where they had the
precogs.
The precogs that could see things before it happened and stuff, and they were in these those deprivation tanks and stuff, and weird stuff with that,
Yeah, he was like strangely prescient, dude.
He has this really great one about the transmigration of Timothy Archer, which is about a colony on Mars where all of the people live these miserable lives, but they're supported because they get this really fun psychedelic drug called Candy. And the supply of candy gets interrupted, and then all hell breaks loose because they're basically screwed without it.
So is that why Biden called Z a dictator after they promised to crack down on the fentanyl epidemic?
Oh, interesting. Was that what happened?
Yes, ma'am. That was made the news yesterday. They had this breakthrough talks on China going to put all these resources into cracking down on the fentanyl trade and production, and then Biden went out and called him a dictator immediately thereafter.
That's really funny. I don't know if you guys saw that they cleaned up San Francisco almost completely in advance of that meeting.
Yeah, right? Like there's a huge scandal, like, oh, you can finally clean it up for a Chinese dictator, but then the rest of the time you can let your tech execs get murdered on the streets for...
Was that when we were there?
No. This was like last week. There's this hilarious photos of like a street that used to be covered in homeless tents, and now there's just like flower planters. And people are like, what'd they do with the homeless people? There's just none of them left in the city anymore.
Send them to Alameda.
They probably like put them in a FEMA camp temporarily, and
they're all undergoing the Neuralink upgrade.
Oh God.
They just gave them new government housing, and yeah.
No, it's not
crazy. So, what would you say if your top 3 podcasts, if people who are new to your channel, if they're going to go on the Demystify Sci podcast and check out 3, I would say the recent one you did was amazing, as is reflected in the views. But I don't
Michael
know if you
Hudson is amazing, and I haven't seen that, so I'm gonna watch that.
Yeah, there's an earlier conversation with Hudson where it's a 2-part series, and he lays out a lot of the ideas that we were kind of picking up on in media res in this last conversation. So I would definitely go back and check out that one. But honestly, we're kind of new to economics. Let's see.
these
who else?
guys, yeah.
We cover a lot of bases. So we do a lot of physics. We do a lot of consciousness researchers. We've had some really good talks with some really, really important consciousness researchers, all the way to Carl Friston and Don Hoffman. We've had a couple with Bernardo Kastrup.
No S on that, I think.
Oh, Kastrup.
We always call him Kastrup.
Bernardo Kastrup. Yosha Bach. A few of these consciousness researchers are pretty interesting. Some really, really powerful physicists too, like Carver Mead, who's a Caltech emeritus, has some really, really interesting ideas about how light works. He worked under Feynman, however you say it. He worked under Feynman at Caltech, and he's got this book called The Little Green Book. Well, it's called Collective Electrodynamics. There you go. And it's a real banger of a book that simplifies electrodynamics. And so that's we have a couple conversations with him.
We have a couple conversations with Alexander Unziker about fundamental physics that are really good. If people are kind of interested in quantum biology,
I like Unziker. He brings it back to like foundationals and really does a lot of good historical physics, research.
Yeah, we just recorded one about the elastic ether, which is really interesting. There's this, I think, Irish physicist named James McCulloch. And he came up with this treatment that solved a number of really interesting problems in terms of materializing electricity and magnetism. And it failed on some accounts too, but it opened up the door to a really interesting. We haven't released that conversation, but it's coming out soon.
We had a really good conversation. Number 187 is with Jack Cruz about electromagnetism's role in biology. He was a very difficult character. He seemed like he was terrified that we were gonna shut him down or something. But if you can get past the kind of aggro narration, it's a really good conversation. And then
187, you said.
187, and then 183 is Richard Lindzen, who's a guy.
That's a good one.
Like a climate scientist who since the 1980s has been like, hey, I don't think that CO2 is the big problem that people make it out to be. And so he lays out basically.
He's coming back too, right? In December.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's an interesting character.
Sorry to interrupt. You said you teach astronomy, and talking about this CO2 not being it, I would love your opinion on the moon used to have ice caps, Mars used to have ice caps, neither of them seem to anymore. Is it solar system-wide heating, not just Earth?
Well, it's funny you asked that. Mars has ice caps still, and they think that there's a lot of subsurface water on the moon too at the poles. So I think that's a huge part of the reason they're sending this van out there with this Artemis project. But it's funny you asked that because we had a podcast recently, I don't know what number it is off the top of my head, with Valentina Zharkova. And she has made this really interesting model of climate change that has to do with the shift in the barycenter of the solar system. So the sun basically wandering as it's getting tugged by Jupiter and everybody. And she basically points out that, the climate change is happening on all the planets. Like, you're not just seeing things happening here. It's not this simple process of humans, doing this one little thing here. It's happening everywhere. And she makes a really good case, and she's published a number of papers on that. And she's published one paper on that in particular, but she's got a lot of, YouTube videos and lectures about it out there.
Episode 200.
There you go.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Well, I have to end this because I'm falling asleep and I have work tomorrow. I got to get to on my schedule. This was a great conversation. I really think you guys need more subscribers, and 10K is not enough. Hopefully you guys will get some more subscribers to your channel. Guys, go subscribe to this podcast. Check out some of their podcasts.
Thanks, Tony.
Really good stuff from you two, and you did a really, really good interview with Sal Pays the other day too. So I'm it was awesome, having to follow that up because you guys asked so many great questions. I was like, all right, it really helped me frame like what I'm going to ask him and what he can't get into. So I'm not going to waste time on that. And you guys asked him a lot of great questions. So I was surprised we even got 4 hours out of him. That was insane.
Nice.
But
Yeah.
go check out that one. You asked some really good questions and also made some really good points. It was an excellent discussion on all regards. So
Thanks, man.
definitely thank you guys so much for coming on. And anything else you want to say before you got
I'm
any
just
other
really
thought?
glad that we reconnected. It's been, you came on when we were still tiny and puppets, and I really appreciate that you've been just grinding at this and how far you've come and the community that you've built, and just it's really, really cool to see you grow and flourish, man. It's really sweet.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't believe it's been that long since the Muppet days. That's 2 years go by like nothing. But yeah, just keep at it. You guys are awesome. You have magic, and it's been an honor to be friends with you.
And you as well. And it's good
Science
to see you
between
too,
two
buddy.
ferns. Sorry to interrupt, but science between two ferns. You got to do a little clip on that at least.
We'll do it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, man. It's good to see you guys. We should do this again down the line.
Yeah, let's do it again. Not before too long, for sure. That was awesome.
And we'll try to actually stop by in person next time we're out on the East Coast too. I really want to see your lab up close.
Yeah, heck yeah. You guys should come by and check out the lab. Definitely, if you're ever this way. And did you want to plug your conference? Do you have a conference coming up or no?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, Demysticon 2024. It's going to be in Austin, Texas, April 7th and 8th.
Coincide with the total solar eclipse, which is passing by there. So we got some really cool speakers. Pierre-Marie Robitaille, one of our best science buddies, is going to be presenting his model of the liquid sun. And I don't know, we've got
mythology,
so you mentioned the Steve Keen from the economics discussion that you were plugging. He's going to be there. We've got some consciousness researchers, history of science people from University of Texas. Anyways, it's going to be awesome. And it looks pretty small, so get a chance to really talk to the guests and I don't know, get to hang out. 2 days talks.
If there's a website for that, do you have it? You could type it. I'll share it, the link to that real quick, and I'll also put it in the description of this video beneath so people can find it there.
It's an Eventbrite link, which is not.
We'll send it to you to put in the description.
We'll send it. Yeah, we'll send it out.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll post it below later. No worries.
Really appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thanks so much, and have a great night.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, man.
It was good seeing both of you.
Take care. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you. Peace out.
Peace.
Do you want to play the music, BurnEye?
I can't because it logged me out of my main count. So I'm like, just
grab your guitar, Jeremy.
We're gonna rock out. Yeah. All right. That's all right. We're just gonna end it here, man. Party on, guys. Have a good night.